Here's the truth nobody really wants to hear. Most photographers don't actually take photographs. And you know what? They don't make them either. They collect them. They walk up to something interesting, then they raise the camera and fire off one frame. And then they walk away like the work is done. One frame. Think about that. Then they go home and they look at it on the big screen, unless they're just being extra lazy and just check it out on a laptop. And they wonder why it doesn't look like the picture they had in their heads. In this episode of The Last Frame, I'm going to tell you why that one habit, taking the picture instead of working the shot, is quietly holding back more photographers than any camera, any lens, or any light or light modifier ever could. And the fix? It costs you nothing, not a dime. Well, actually, it does cost you effort. And that's exactly why most people won't do it. Welcome to The Last Frame. I'm Joe Edelman. Let's get into it. Good evening, gang. If you followed me before, you know that a little over 2 years ago, I went quiet and I stopped the show. And let me be honest with you about why. Because I think the why matters. And honestly, it is kind of the whole point of this show, right? The old show, it was the tail end of the YouTube grind. It burned me out, plain and simple. And I want to be straight with you about how that happened, just to save some of you from possibly falling into that trap, because it is a trap that a lot of creators fall into. I was putting out a polished 10 to 15-minute tutorial every single week for, God, 6 or 7 years, doing it all myself. And then every week, there was a blank page starting over. There was no skeleton, there was no framework. And each time you'd sit down, you'd start from zero. Then came Talk Chat and The Last Frame. And honestly, it was like a part time job that wound up eating a lot of evenings and weekends, and eventually my love for the thing. But here's the part that I'm least proud of. I was chasing the wrong scoreboard. I was watching view counts. I was wading into gear debates and trying to be the voice of reason, which sounds noble. But at the end of the day, I needed to feed the algorithm to get attention. I had sponsors, and to keep manufacturers happy, you end up in this position of constantly bragging about the gear that somebody sent you. And I just didn't like who that was turning me into and what it was turning, honestly, education into. So at the end of 2022, I dropped every sponsorship. I became, for lack of a better word, a de-influencer. No more gear hype. And that freedom gave me the ability to talk honestly about the real pros and the real cons. And that was worth more than any free gear ever was. But the deeper problem was bigger than the burnout or the sponsors. The format itself, honestly, it had hit a wall. People like yourselves were watching, and I love you for that. It's so great to see all these names back tonight. It really is. And people were enjoying it. And sure, my ego loved that. But people also weren't going out and picking up a camera. And come on, you've heard me say it before. Photography, it's one of those things where you can read about it and you can watch videos until you've read a book full of knowledge, but none of that is worth anything until you put it to use. I was entertaining people, and that's not necessarily helping them get better. There's a big difference. I just got to a point where I couldn't ignore that anymore. So, why is this different, you might ask? Two things. One, this show is going to have a very simple, very fixed structure every week on purpose. I'm going to give you a hot take to open up the show. We're going to do a quote of the week, but a little bit differently than I've done it in the past. And then one real lesson. I'm going to take your questions and then send you off. And as always, tell you to go pick up those cameras. The structure, It's not going to change, at least for the foreseeable future. Only the lesson changes. And that will help me keep from burning out a second time around and honestly protect my energy for the part that really matters, which is really trying to help you. And that brings me to number two. And this is the promise. I'm not here to sell you anything or perform for a view count. Look, I'm simply a guy with 55 years behind a camera who wants to share what I've learned with people who genuinely, I can talk, want to get better. I will not be accepting sponsors. I will not be accepting any paid advertising. The only ads that you're going to see are the ones that YouTube makes you watch as a penalty for not being a premium subscriber. I will continue to promote my speaking engagements when they come up and a book that's almost ready, but that's it. This is about sharing photography knowledge and advice. So, look, if that sounds good to you, you're in the right place. Let's not waste another minute. Let's go ahead and get to work. So, every week on this show, we're going to open with a quote from a photographer that's worth listening to. And there was only one place that I could start for the very first quote of this reboot. I'm going to go with the OG Ansel Adams. Here's the quote. There are always two people in every picture, the photographer and the viewer. Now, I want to tell you why that line matters so much and why I think it's the right note to start this whole thing out on. Let's be honest about, honestly, a really core subject in photography that doesn't get talked about enough. Photography, at its core, is kind of a very selfish pursuit. We don't pick up a camera because we want to please other people. We pick it up because we enjoy it. And then we fall in love with it because something in front of us made us want to keep it or keep a memory of it, right? And look, that's a good thing. That is where the passion comes from. And then I feel like a lot of people, the bug bites, right? If you've been bitten the way I was bitten when I was a teenager, you reach a point where eventually you want to share your pictures. You want to show them to people, even if it's just friends or relatives. But you work up the nerve to put your work out into the world. And here's where it gets hard, especially with social media, because social media makes that terrifying for some people and even far too easy for others. The minute we start sharing, a lot of us might get disappointed. We even get frustrated. We feel let down by the response that we get, especially when somebody decides to critique our work. And look, it's the internet, so that critique is not always particularly kind, right? And in my opinion, this is exactly where Adams is absolutely right. There are two people in every picture, the photographer and the viewer. And the hard reality is that no other human being will have the same experience with your photograph that you had when you made it. Think about it. They weren't there. They didn't feel what you felt, what inspired you to take it. They didn't have to solve any of the problems that you solved in order to make the photo. All they have is what's inside that frame. So here's the takeaway from this quote. And honestly, it is the kindest, most useful thing that I can tell you on night one of this Last Frame reboot. If you want people to care about your work, if you want them to appreciate it, then the viewer has to be part of your thinking the moment that you create the image. Not afterwards, but during the process. And that thinking, by the way, that carries you all the way through to how you process the image later. Photoshop, Lightroom, Luminar, I don't care what you use. Every decision is you talking to that second person. Now, it sounds easy, right? Including the viewer, it takes real thought. Real thought, it's hard work. In other words, effort. And honestly, maybe most of all, it takes empathy. And come on, empathy is something that this world could use a lot more of in general, right? But I will tell you, as photographers, it is the one thing that quietly makes your work better and more interesting. When you start photographing for the two people in the picture instead of just one, everything changes big time. So hold on to that idea because it leads us right into tonight's topic. All right. I want to talk about the most underused habit in all of photography. And it is the cleanest possible statement of what this whole show is about. I call it working the shot. You may have heard me talk about it before, but I want to be a little bit more specific about what it really means. And I want to start with a myth that I want to kind of dispose of, right? Because that's how we're going to do things around here is get rid of some of the baloney that's out there. The myth is that good photographers walk up to something, see the shot, take the shot, and that's the gift. One and done. Boom. The truth is the exact opposite. The photographers whose work that you admire, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the people that are really doing the top notch work. They're not taking one frame and walking away. They are working the scene. Fact is, they're working it, they're circling it, but and the fact is, they've probably done a whole lot of work before they even got to the scene, prep work. But when they see that shot and they pick up that camera, they're shooting it from low, they're shooting it from high, they're shooting it from left, from closer, from further. They're changing the light, they're changing the expression, they're changing the moment, not to mention the exposure, you name it. And out of all that effort, they keep the one that sings, meaning when you look at it, it grabs you by the ears and doesn't let you look away. So that all sounds glorious, right? But what does working the shot actually mean? It means deliberate variation on every single setup. You find something worth photographing, you have that ooh moment. And instead of taking a picture, maybe you take the first frame because you're afraid the moment will leave and it'll be gone. But then you ask yourself a question. What happens if I drop down low? What happens if I move 3 feet to the right and put a distraction that's there behind the subject, not growing out of its head? What happens if I wait 2 more seconds for a better expression? What happens if I shoot it wide to get a sense of place and show where we are, and then shoot it tight to show the detail on what matters? Every one of those variations is a different photograph of the same thing. And one of them will be better than the frame that you would have settled for in that first frame. I want to point out to you, there was a lot of what ifs, right? Curiosity. Curiosity, in my opinion, is a key element in creativity. We'll call it the what if factor, right? Now, here's the why. On this show, I always talk about the why. Everything I write, all the videos I ever did, I talk about the why. There are a few reasons that this habit works, but I want to make sure that you understand all of them. First one, frames are free. I get it. If you're a film shooter, frames aren't free. And if you're a film shooter, my advice is just remember what your mama taught you. Don't use 4-letter words. Seriously, I'm not serious. I'm kidding, right? Film, a little bit more expensive, but I'll tell you what, even in the film days, as a teenager that didn't have a lot of money, I was a crazy heavy shooter. But today in the digital realm, frames are free. Remember that. Frames are free, right? This is the gift of the era that we live in and the technology that we have. When you shot film, you had to be stingy. But that no longer applies. And a lot of photographers never got the memo. Today, the only thing that a frame costs you is the effort to make it, period. And especially as the technology is advancing even further and we're getting into global shutters and the such, we're going to reach a point very soon where frame counts and will my shutter die after 150,000 or 200,000 actuations be a factor? Because it's not going to be a factor. So you're just spending the effort it takes to make it. And look, if that variation is free and you do multiple variations, one of those variations is likely to be your best picture of the day. Why on earth would you walk away after one or two frames? And by the way, I just want to point out that when I have that ooh moment, like I should take a picture of that, and I get to one or two frames into the process and epicopathy sets in, meaning I'm thinking, you know what? I can't get close enough, or I don't have the right lens, or whatever. That's all the more reason why I need to work that shot. I need to respect that, ooh, I should take a picture of that and work to find the image. Second on the reasoning list, when you do this, you're building a visual database. Every time you work a scene and then study the results, you are teaching and training your own eye. You start to learn things. It kind of becomes like your gut, your instincts. You learn that that low angle made a subject look powerful, or that the tighter crop helped kill the clutter and really made things more impactful. Or you learn that sometimes by shooting that moment, but then waiting a half a second or a second later and shooting more turns out to be the real moment or the better expression. Do that a couple hundred times, and then you stop guessing. Instead, you start seeing it before you even raise the camera because you can anticipate it. Going back to what I said before about people that had the gift, doing this is not talent. It's reps. It's like going to the gym for photographers, right? It's doing the work. Third, and this ties straight back to Ansel Adams, working the shot is how you serve that second person, the viewer. When you shoot one frame, you're photographing for yourself. You just need to document it. I saw it. There it is. Done. When you work the scene and you ask yourself, what is actually being communicated here? What is the viewer going to see and feel? What do I want them to see? How do I want them to feel about it? Then you're bringing the second person into the room. That is the empathy that I was talking about. Turning it into a habit that you can actually practice. Now, I want to be careful about one thing here because I don't want you to hear the wrong lesson. Working the shot is not machine gunning or holding down the shutter and praying, spray and pray, right? That one of 40 identical frames is sharp or whatever. Okay. Look, that's not effort. That's just noise. The click, click, click that I'm talking about, it's deliberate. Every frame is a decision. You change something on purpose. You see what it did. You change the next thing on purpose. It's quantity in service of intent, not quantity instead of intent. So here's your action step. It's dead simple and it's free. On your next shoot, and when I say next shoot, that's a planned shoot or that's a moment where you pick up the camera. And by the way, you're photographers. So this should apply even if you're using your iPhone to take the picture. On everything that you shoot, before you let yourself walk away, force yourself to find at least 3 more frames. Not 3 more clicks of the same thing, 3 more decisions. A different height, a different distance, a different moment. Do that on every setup for at least 1 day or 1 week or 1 month. And I promise you, you will come home with at least one image that you never would have gotten. One image, by the way, that you're happy about that you never would have gotten. And in the process, you will have started building the eye that gets you the next one faster. It's about repetition. It's about building habits. I wrote a full article on this. It's called Work the Shot. I am going to go ahead and, in fact, here, I will drop it into the chat right now so that you guys have it. I would encourage you, if you have a few minutes later, go ahead and read it. It breaks down a little bit more of this. So read it after the show. And by the way, if you want a companion article to that, I'm also going to share a second one. And they do, they kind of go hand in hand. It's an article all about epic apathy, right? I encourage you, read the two. I do not think you will feel like you wasted your time, but drill it down. That's the lesson for today. Don't take a picture, work the shot. All right. So, this is my favorite part. And this is honestly the real reason that this show exists. The floor is now open. Ask me anything, and we are gonna get into things. I see there's a couple questions in here already. By the way, so many of you have gone ahead and typed some questions in, type your hellos. I'm really honestly kind of gobsmacked, gang. I will say this was not part of my planned comments for the night, but I did not expect this kind of response coming back. Thank you. And I promise to do everything to make it worth your while. Um, it's also a good time to remind you that if you do find any value in these live streams as we go forward, do please hit the thumbs up under the video and let your photography friends know about it. I'm not worried about how many subscribers. I don't really care about the likes. It's a matter of trying to get the word out to as many people as possible so that we can have an impact. So, that being said, it's great to see all of you. I'm going to scroll back here really quick. There were some questions in here actually from earlier on and questions. And here's the one question I want to know from you guys, as many of you as possible. It's 2026. It's been at least 2 years since we've had this venue to discuss things. What's going on with your photography today? What are you struggling with? What could you use some help with? What do you need a kick in the butt with, right? But anyway, let me go back here. One of the first comments that came in before the show started, Aussie2UGA, wow, the legend will be back, or will he be AI? No, this is the real deal, but I want to be clear. Any and every mistake that occurs, I'm blaming it on AI. And I will say, maybe this will get some questions started. AI is a topic that we're going to talk about down the road, not for a couple of weeks. It may come up in the Q&A before that, but I am very, very much into AI. And if you're, among the folks that were here in the past and follow me, that honestly shouldn't surprise you a whole lot, but I think it might surprise you some of the many different ways that I've been using it and some of the uses for it. Um, I think there's a tremendous amount of potential. Yes, there's a lot of issues, but the issues are less the AI than they are the people that are going to do stupid things with them, right? So I'm always game to talk about AI at this point and all the different ways that we can use it. But again, photography, that's what we're here for first. I'm scrolling back. Let's see here. Actually, Steve Wilking asked me what I've learned in the 2 years we've been away. And then I joked, I said, enough to write a book. And I mentioned earlier, yes, there's a book coming in September. Next week, I will tell you a little bit more about it. But it is in the process of being typeset now. It's been a much crazier journey than I ever thought it would. And I'll be glad to share lots of information about it. Let me see here. Wow, Piano Finger, you were my greatest inspiration to get started 9 years ago. I truly appreciate what you taught me. Since that time, I've been around the world with my camera as a professional. Well, first of all, thank you. But listen, if you've been around the world as a professional, congrats, man. You've done the hard work, not me. I don't get any credit for that. Okay. But I love to hear that stuff. Let's see. Calvino Production, John Edward. How we doing here? So his questions, first one that I found is, can you walk us thoughtfully through your head shoot. Focal length, pose choice, etc., is different in a good way. It feels, it challenges. Oh, okay. Are you talking about my headshot, John Edward? I got it. Okay. Um, thoughtfully through my headshots. So, um, let's see. Oh, and Canadian Source Rex. I apologize. I missed your question. I'm going to get that one next. I promise. But seriously, gang, come on. What are you struggling with right now? So, John Edward, my headshot. Um, I'll give you a little funny anecdote first about my headshot that you'll, since we were just talking about AI, within 5 minutes of me posting that photograph on Facebook for the first time. Cool 1128. Thank you so much, man, for the super chat. Seriously, not necessary, gang. I really appreciate it, but thank you. Within 5 minutes of posting that image, a comment went up. It's like, why are you using AI to do your headshots? It's like, oh, great. Here we go. I promise you there is no AI involved in that headshot. Take a look at this. Yeah, there's a fair amount of retouching. I'm not going to apologize for that. So first of all, John Edward, the background is this. Number one, I hate posing for portraits. Period. And I get it. A lot of us, we're photographers. We make the jokes, that's why I'm behind the camera instead of front of the camera. I've made that joke my whole freaking life, right? Um, Probably a little over 10 years ago, I started doing my profile pictures with either a 50 millimeter lens or a wider lens at 35, even 24, and making it a little bit more of like a caricature type feel. In other words, head close to the lens makes the head bigger in relationship to the body, and really kind of made it all about personality. Because also part of my thought process, since I was doing YouTube and I was doing the influencer thing there, right? It was a way to stand out a little bit and do something different. Certainly, if you're thinking about, doing kind of a business headshot, either for yourself or for, LinkedIn or those kinds of things, for most people, I would question as to whether or not that would be a good idea and suggest it's probably not. For me, yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit different. I talk a lot about creativity and not doing the same thing and not following trends. So it's kind of my own trend in that I keep doing it, but it's really just about, lots of personality and making a picture that I think has a little bit more me in it as opposed to kind of a standardized portrait. The lighting is really very simple. It's a 32-inch softbox on camera right, reflector on camera left, and a rim light with a blue gel on the back camera left side, and a background light with a blue gel behind me aimed up at a black background. And literally, when I do these, I set the camera up on a tripod. I set myself on a really low stool, so I'm pretty low so the camera can look down on me. I set the camera on a tripod, and the lens winds up literally about 18 inches in front of my face. And I set the camera on an intervalometer, so it takes a picture every 3 seconds, and then I just sit down and go. And I will usually tether. I didn't this time, actually. I got a little lazy. Shouldn't brag about that, but I did. But usually I'll tether so I can see it on the computer screen, and that way I can, adjust the shirt and wrinkles, so I don't have a ton of post processing to do. My goal is just to kind of polish up that skin, try to take 10 or 15 years off and put it out there. That's it. So, let's see here. Canadian Source Rex, I could use some help in finding clients. So far, all my clients have been word of mouth. Interesting. So that's a double-edged sword, right? And Canadian Source Rex, while I'm talking this first part of the answer, type in a response that tells me a little bit about what kind of clients are we going after? Corporate clients, headshots. What do we do? What defines a client, right? But a couple of things. Number one, the best marketing that any photographer can have, any photographer, anytime, anywhere, is word of mouth. Back in the 1980s, when I, opened up a studio and first went into business, when I got out of the newspaper world, word of mouth was how you survived, right? And people tend to think that now that we're in the internet age and, we have all this technology, that word of mouth is a thing of the past. No, What's cool about the internet and social media is that word of mouth happens in the blink of an eye, and it can happen amongst thousands instantly. So, never underestimate the value of word of mouth. And I will say about word of mouth, for any of you that are looking at making money, don't be afraid to ask for word of mouth. What do I do every week? Well, what did I do every week for several years? And I'm going to do it now. When I come on here, I say, hey, please tell your photography friends. Please spread the word. It helps. It helps build the community, helps make this a vibrant discussion every week, because this is the part that I enjoy when we get to talk, right? Um, Beyond that, Canadian Source Rex, I'll give you one piece of tough love advice. I have found in my experience when people are making statements like that, they're on the verge of it becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's kind of like saying, well, I really struggle with this. I'm not really good at this, or I'm not as good as that person. Well, it's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't ever look at it that way. Be positive in the sense of this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go, and then start solving problems. How do I get there? What do I need, to do, right? So, but I will say I find that when people are struggling with getting clients, part of the challenge is they're not being honest with themselves about the way they're presenting themselves. So that means taking a good look at your website, taking a good look at your socials. And I don't mean up in your game, posting 3 times a day, 5 days a week. Nah, that's all crap. That stuff is so long gone. Don't bother with that crap. There's no secret sauce. You can ignore the algorithms. Absolutely. Okay. But you have to make sure that when that word of mouth does bring your name up and people go to look at that website or they go to look at that social media, that they are impressed with what they see. Photographers have a horrible habit of not updating their stuff enough. Hopefully your work this year is better than it was last year and better than it was the year before. But if you're not showing that, if you're not updating that better work, then your work's starting to look dated, right? So get back to me on some of the types of work you're doing. I'll fill in some more, but I'm going to move on for right now. Okay. Um, so let's see here. Backing up, April, still shooting fine art portraiture, but switched over to shooting concerts and musicians. I need to I should have read this before I just said that. April, there you go. Need to update my website, but I'm stuck on showcasing both in a cohesive way. Two sites thoughts. April, unless you're finding that people are getting confused about what you're doing, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm a photographer who does these two things and I'm really good at these two things, right? Even though they're very different. It's certainly very important to be honest with yourself. Like, let's say you have 12 really amazing fashion portraits, and I know you have some really awesome fashion portraits, but you only have 9 really amazing concert shots. Don't decide, well, I have to have 12, so I'm going to take 3 not so amazing, but I'm going to stick them there so it's 12 and 12, right? That's where photographers go south when they start showing 2 sets of things, right? And then the other thing is you have to ask yourself, what is your business model? Are you making money at both? Are you only making money at one? And that's going to help you with, how you prioritize it. But more than ever, the conversation around websites for photographers, it goes back to something I used to talk about a lot, but I was kind of swimming upstream then, not now. Your website, I don't care what kind of photography you do, but if you are using your website to market yourself, all you need to do, I say all, there's still some work involved, but you need to look at your website as though it were a brochure. That's it. It's a brochure. But that brochure needs to be interesting enough and show good enough work that people want to get to the back of the brochure where the address, phone number, email address are at, or the form, so they can contact you. That's really what you need to be looking at. You don't need to overdo it with language. You don't need to be worried about having every page on your website showing up in Google. Those days are long gone, folks. And down the road, we can even do a last frame kind of about the 2026 version of SEO, which is honestly more about AI. Okay. So let's see. Dale Sanders, struggling with reaching out, model calls to build a portfolio, massive social anxiety. Wow, with a side of CPTSD. Any advice for that, sir? Well, first of all, Dale, I'm sorry that you're struggling with that. I can understand it, but I can't really understand. I can only imagine. And I'm so thankful that I don't deal with it. But for people that do, I struggle giving advice there. But here's what I'm going to tell you, right? Um, I think that the internet gives you a little bit of an edge in that if you put some effort into be it your website or your social media posts, and if you put some real empathy into how you message potential models, you have the ability to get much further into the process of connecting and setting something up without having to actually meet the person, have a conversation, that type of thing, than you could certainly if it was a matter of needing to knock on somebody's door and talk to them, right? But I stress that point of putting empathy into it. Here's one of the biggest mistakes that I routinely see, Dale, and this has been a problem since the early days of the internet when modeling kind of went online and photographers started connecting with models, and it hasn't gotten any better. Photographer finds a model on Instagram or TikTok now or Facebook, wherever, and sends a DM. It's like, wow, love to shoot. Let me know. Look, if I was that model, and nobody's asking me to shoot that way, but if I was that model, I certainly wouldn't be responding, right? Might flatter my ego for 5 minutes, but I'm not going to respond, right? When you reach out to people, and again, you can do this in an email. So you can even use AI to help you craft the email, right? And there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. Again, still requires a little bit of effort. But when you reach out, don't reach out and say, hey, you want to shoot? Or hey, you want to collaborate? Or hey, you want to create? If you're interested in that person, take a good look at them, stalk them a little bit, not like a creeper, in the sense of if they've got modeling pictures online, get a sense of how they look in different poses, different kind of lighting. Get a sense of what do I want to shoot with this person? And I don't mean, oh, I want to shoot glamour, or I want to shoot fashion, or I want to shoot boudoir. No, I mean, okay, you want to do boudoir, fine, but describe the picture. I would like to do this kind of a picture and this kind of a pose with this kind of an outfit, and I think you would be perfect for it. Flatter the person a little bit. Again, kind of put yourself in their shoes. So that's the challenge, right? And obviously, you have to get over, your anxieties, but put yourself in their shoes with the idea that if somebody reached out to you, what are the things that you would want to hear? What are the things that would make you interested, make you excited? Obviously, it goes without saying, put together the best possible presentation of photography that you can. I get it. You're probably going to tell me, well, I'm looking for models because I want to be able to get better. Yep. But in the meantime, take what you have and make sure it's only your best. And if you're in the beginning of this, and you feel like my skill set's just not there, nobody's going to look at my work and be impressed. That's not a reason to not reach out. That's a reason to reach out with a little compliment, very specific ideas, and a heavy dose of honesty. Don't ever be afraid to tell the person you're reaching out to, hey, I've only been at it for so long, or, I'm still learning a lot, but I'm diving into the deep end of the pool because I know that the only way I'm going to get better is by picking up a camera and shooting. Because that crazy guy, Joe Edelman, tells me that all the time. And I just think you would be amazing to work with. And this is the idea I'm thinking of. Would you be interested? Could we chat? Right. And again, you don't have to jump into the phone call right away. I will say that generally speaking, the sooner you have a conversation with somebody, the better. But you've got to do what works within your boundaries, Dale. So I hope that helps a little bit. If you want to follow up with me at some point, Give me a sense of what you have been doing to contact people and how you contact them. And then we can kind of try and refine that for you a little bit. Okay. Back to Canadian Source Rex. Mike's been doing started to do some food and product photos for local restaurants for their social media. Aha. So here's one thing I've learned about restaurants, especially in the United States, Mike, is that there are so many restaurants that survive in business despite themselves, meaning the people that own the restaurants and start the restaurants, they have no freaking clue about marketing. They kind of fall for that old trap of, if you build it, they will come. And then they kind of survive just because they're a bit lucky, right? I find that here I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so southeastern Pennsylvania. We have an insane amount of, restaurants, mom and pop restaurants that open up and die within the first year. And I realized the first time I go in there that, wow, this food's really good, but these people clearly have no idea how to run a business or market themselves. And it's unfortunate, but I digress. That being said, honestly, what I would do, Mike, is I'm gonna go old school, man. Okay. I would make sure that Montreal, I'm sure it's not a whole lot different in Montreal. However, the food's probably better there. But uh I would make sure that you have a website with a really good sampling of photos. And what I would do is Google the phrase wholesale printer. One of the ones that I particularly like here in the US is a printer called 4 Over. So it's the number 4 hyphen over, 4over.com. You can get like 2 to 300 postcards printed for like 20 or 30 US dollars, right? Really reasonable. 4 color, right? And design like a 4x5 or 5x7 inch postcard. Don't worry about leaving space to be able to mail it because you're not going to mail it. That's the whole point. You're not going to mail it. You want one side to be, 2, 3, 4 maximum great food shots, product shots. And then the other side, it's going to have your information, maybe one other picture and your website URL. Okay. And then honestly, what I would do is I would take an afternoon or take a couple hours once every few weeks, and I would get in your car and I would go restaurant to restaurant, walk in. You don't have to be like shirt and tie dressed up, but dress business casual. Walk in and just say, "Hey, is there any chance the manager's in?" If the manager's busy, no sweat. Say, "Listen, I'm a photographer in the area. I do a lot of food work for social media for various clients. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I would just love it if I could leave this postcard for them, right? To let them know that I exist." And what you're doing is you're building awareness for your business. These people aren't going online looking for photographers, because a lot of them are taking the pictures themselves. A lot of them, have photographers. Some are good, some suck. A lot of them have college kids doing social media. They take the pictures, whatever. That postcard. Think about when we get junk mail. I'm sure it's no different in Canada. You get junk mail or you get a postcard in the mail. It normally doesn't go in the trash instantly, right? Especially if it's something that you think, well, maybe I could use that. There's a spot in your house. It sits on the table and it gets moved around a couple times, or it might be on the kitchen counter or wherever, right? And then, 2 or 3 weeks later, it gets thrown out, right? Every now and then something gets grabbed and people hold on to it, right? And that's really what you want. And even if they don't keep it, you're only leaving, a 20 or 30 cent piece of paper, and your goal is really just to create awareness. It's like, hey, here's this guy. I do this. I'm available. Very old school, but it's very effective. And I know people, especially in this area, actually, that are doing that and having a lot of success. A lot of success with it. Okay. Let's see here. What else I saw? There were a couple others. Let me scroll back to find them. Um, let's see. Um, SDA 0271, same situation. Shot a ton of college gymnastics in the winter, but the camera's been sitting since mid-March. Oh gosh. Well, next week, you need to be here. I had the answers. Really, that's kind of what our discussion's about next week. I'll tell you right before I sign off. Okay. Um, April mentioned, going back to Dale's question, Might I suggest starting a group page similar to what boudoir photographers do and invite people to join and put your concepts in there? Yeah, I mean, something like that. April, I think the key to that, Dale, is if you've got a decent portfolio, if you've got a decent amount of images that are good images, right? Then doing something like that, yes, there's a good likelihood that you will be able to find people and kind of build word of mouth. I'd be willing to bet there's also some kind of more generically open Facebook groups where that same kind of thing happens. Of course, the challenge you have is not everybody behaves in those groups. You know, you post your pictures, you put your effort into it, and some people can be jerks and all that kind of stuff. Um, and look, it's different for everyone. I'll even tell you guys when I posted, 2 days ago that, hey, I'm back and I'm gonna do this show. Within the first 15 minutes, I had 2 posts or 2 comments about, who cares? I'm irrelevant, that kind of stuff. Jerks are jerks, and they're always gonna be jerks, and there will always be people that are jerks. Um, and I get it, maybe because I'm a baby boomer that identifies as Gen X, it rolls off a little bit better. Stings for 5 minutes, and then it's like, "Yeah, screw them." Boom, and I delete it, right? Because it's my space, I delete it. But, you kinda have to find what's going to work for you to get yourself out there. But especially before next week, Dale, if you can get me some more image on or more information on how you've been contacting models and that type of stuff, next week's Q&A will definitely chat about that. And gang, you can always fill out that contact form on my website if you have questions or things you'd like me to talk about. Please don't hesitate. Please, okay? Even in the comments under the video, you can go ahead and put stuff in there. And if I can't get to it one week, we'll get to it another week for sure. Okay. So let's see here. What else was in there? Guys, you're like all awesome. Thank you so much for all the very kind words. I sincerely appreciate it. Um, so I think I've got all the questions that are in here. Keep typing, but I will say this since I brought up AI a little bit earlier on, because I know that the minute AI comes in the conversation in the photography world, some people get their backs up against the wall. So I wanna kind of set the stage for some future AI conversations. I actually have a camera club presentation that I'm doing that's kind of very popular this fall because camera clubs are already booking, for the fall. It is called AI, the Photographer's Advantage, and it delves into AI and all the different things you can do with it. Because I think one of the biggest problems in the AI conversation, we're all very aware of um, how amazingly good AI is at creating images, but also how horribly bad it is at the same time. We're very aware of the fact that people can be very misleading with it, right? But in that conversation, which look, that conversation parallels the use of AI in the world in general, right? People tend to be afraid of things they don't understand. The fact of the matter is, I use both Claude and ChatGPT heavily every day. I use them to help me with research in pretty much every aspect of my life. I use them to manage pieces of my life. Even for tonight's show, AI didn't write the show. That's me talking, but I spent some time with Claude, researched some other live streams, researched some of the psychology behind show formatting for a 1 hour format based on what I want to do. But here's the thing about it, right? You can't be lazy and expect AI to help you in any way, shape, or form. You're going to get crap results. When I asked AI Claude to help me create a format for this, which I was very proud of the fact that the format was very similar to what I was doing before, right? But what I have it do is actually interview me, ask me a whole bunch of questions about why I'm doing it, what I want to accomplish, what my thoughts are on different things, right? And then it goes from there. But I will share as we go forward with AI. I have actually built a tool that I use with the folks that I mentor. I see Robin's here. Hi, Robin. Yes, I'm still doing mentoring. Um, this tool has the ability to judge. I hate that word, but that's essentially what it's doing. It's judging a photograph on the same criteria that judges use in the PPA, the Professional Photographers of America competitions. And I've also trained it to be able to evaluate a photograph based on the way that I would evaluate the photograph. Meaning, in order to evaluate it, the photographer's got to provide, why did you take the picture? What were you trying to accomplish? What obstacles did you face? If you could do it again, what would you do differently? And then it evaluates the picture. So it's not your traditional critique. Um, AI does an incredibly good job. It's mind-boggling how good it is able to do. So I have a lot of the photographers that I work with in my mentoring program are using this tool as they're creating new work. They can run an image through this to see how does it match up on the scale of these competitions, or what is Joe likely to say when they sit down with me and we start to talk about the image and the shoot, etc. So they're getting really quick feedback, but on a much bigger scale. I see Mike talking here about using AI for ideas, helping formatting emails. There are so many different ways we can be using AI. So look, you're not going to hear me, push any of you say, listen, if you're a real photographer, you got to be using AI. No, but I will tell you, if you're not at least dabbling in it, and if you're not at least being curious, like, and I don't mean being curious by typing in, what's the best color for a background? No, right? But really digging in to seeing what it can do for you, you're missing out, right? You absolutely are. And you all know that creativity is a big, big, big thing for me, right? So here's the thing. Understand that AI can help you tremendously in boosting your creativity, but how is AI giving you answers? It's giving you answers from the culmination of everything that's been done before. So it can still only take us so far, right? So AI is not a silver bullet for any aspect of photography. It's a great resource tool. It's a great way to be able to up your game, especially when it comes to planning and prep. So many amazing things you can do with AI for that. So I guarantee you, we will be talking about that. We will get into it as questions come up. I will definitely, tackle those, and we'll try to help those of you that are a little bit intimidated by it. But believe me, you're going to be seeing more and more of it work its way into the cameras. Um, we're also seeing this will be controversial, but this is the great part about not having sponsors. We're also seeing a lot of photographers being sucked in to AI software for culling and editing, things like Evoto and that. I have very strong feelings about those kinds of softwares. I don't feel they're ready for prime time yet. And plus, look, let's face it, I don't know how much you understand of the history about Evoto, but they're the company that came out with the piece of software to eliminate the need for getting a headshot taken. So as far as I'm concerned, any company that's dumb enough to make software for photographers and then create free software that bypasses the need for photographers, I don't know how you can support them, period. I don't care if you're a professional or an amateur. They're just idiots. They don't deserve to be making money off of our passion. But we'll get into that, and we'll definitely, be talking about that as we go along. Um, Let's see, Neil, I feel as though AI is a new tool in my bag. I completely agree. It's a big part of the creative process. So, also, Neil, love the new look for the background and sides of your work. I keep thinking it's nothing like that I did new, but it's been 2 years. Sorry. So yeah, this is, and I will tell you guys. So for those of you that are, the nerdy, tech people here, um, after I stopped doing the last frame before, I actually disassembled my whole live stream setup for a little while. I was still doing some one-on-one mentoring and that, but it was just, literally doing it off of a laptop for a little while. And I was still getting calls to do camera club presentations, which I really enjoy, especially the virtual ones and that, because that way I can do them all over the world. So I really kind of took a big step back with it and retooled. The camera that you are watching me on is a DJI Osmo Action 4, and I think they're up to Action 6 now. It's Action 4, so it's a little action cam. And the microphone that I am using that you're hearing me on is simply the built-in microphone on my MacBook Pro, which is sitting right next to the camera. It's just out of frame there. Um, so it's a very stripped down setup, very simple, and I intend to keep it that way. I'm not going to go off the deep end with all kind of crazy gear and creating all kind of wild transitions and everything. We're gonna keep the focus on talking about photography and being able to really help people and help you all improve in what you're doing. But I promise you, AI is definitely going to be a big part of the conversation for sure. I just had a question come in. Um, this had a question come in via Facebook, so I'll go ahead and we'll do this one. We'll make this our last one for the night. What's the one piece of gear that will make me a better photographer? Um, um, Honestly, my answer is none. There is no one piece of gear that's going to make you a better photographer. Um, I'm actually going to go back to one of the things I said tonight in that question and say, and instead of a piece of gear, I'm going to lash onto that word empathy. Um, Empathy will make you a better photographer. Thinking about the people that are going to look at your photographs, thinking about the people that are going to be the intended audience, for your photograph. Um, because that, what it does, it kind of creates a built-in accountability, right? And it's that accountability that hopefully is going to energize you for the idea of putting a little bit more effort in, working the shot. One of the things you're going to hear me talk a lot about, and it ties into the book that I have coming that I'll tell you about next week. You're going to hear me talk a lot about workflow and building good habits and good workflows. And I want to spend a lot of time over the coming months kind of dispelling some myths. And when I say myths, they're, some of the things where you hear photographers dig their heels and it's like, this is the only way to do it. This is the right way to do it. And the worst part of it is in the past, I made the mistake of arguing that they're wrong. And they're not necessarily wrong. But what's missing in that conversation, that debate, is the context. It's like the idea of, hey, you should always shoot raw. Yes, you should. But there are really good reasons to be shooting JPEGs. So in the right situation, a JPEG is the right answer. And by the way, if you think JPEGs are the right answer, you should probably be shooting HEIC files, HEIC files, if your camera allows it, because they actually make a whole lot more sense than JPEGs do. So if you're not familiar with those, you probably think, wait, that's what my iPhone does. Yep. Well, most mirrorless cameras shoot them as well. And if you haven't tried them, you're missing out big time. So we'll get into all that stuff. I promise. And that's the idea, is really trying to get some context behind things. But that being said, that's 1 hour. Here we go. Thank you for being here on night one. Uh, Seriously, it means so much more to me than you know. I appreciate all of you so much. Next Wednesday, I hinted at this before. We're going to talk about why most photographers quit or give up on themselves and how to get your mojo back. Because if you've ever felt that creative tank hit empty, not only is that scary as all get out, but it can be frustrating, depressing. So if you've ever been through that, next week, this one's for you. Until then, gang, thank you so much for watching and listening. And you know the next part. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. I'm Joe Edelman. Good night.